Hey there, so in this video we're going to take a look at how we can put together solving equations along with actually plugging in variables as well. So let's take a look at some examples to start. So on the first example we have 3a minus 2b plus c squared, and then minus 2 equals b squared c plus a. So we have b equals 3, and anywhere there's a b in this problem, we're going to plug in a 3. I typically like to put parentheses around the number that I'm plugging in. And then for c equals 2, anywhere there's a c, we're going to put the number 2 in that place. So let's start from the beginning. We have 3a minus parentheses 2 times b, so that would be the number 3 in place of this b, plus, and then we have the number c, or the letter c, which will be 2. You can put, again, parentheses there or not, because it's just a number not being multiplied by anything or raised to a power. You could leave it without parentheses there. And then we close that parenthesis and we put a squared, and then we have another closed parenthesis. So the one thing you do have to be careful of is how many parentheses you have and where you close them. So that covers this part right here. And then we still have minus 2 equals, and then b squared. So we're going to do 3 squared. And again, you can put parentheses or not. And then c will be 2, and then plus a. And we don't know what a is. So let's go ahead and use our order of operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, to go ahead and solve this equation, or simplify each side and then eventually solve. So let's go ahead and start with parentheses. Inside parentheses, we can go ahead and simplify some things. So we have inside the parentheses here, and then once we have that, then we will look at this whole part in the parentheses, all of that. So let's start with this pink part here. We have 2 times 3 plus 2 in parentheses. So this part needs to be done first, then we'll put the squared in with it. So 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 2 is 8. So really, this part right here is going to be replaced with an 8, and it will be squared. 8 squared is 64. So this first part we can go ahead and write as 3a minus 64 is where we get, or what we get from this section here, parentheses minus 2 equals, and then we can do a similar thing on the right side. We can look and see, is there anything within parentheses, and there aren't anything. There aren't things inside of parentheses that we can do. So we just have 3 squared. Again, you can do the parentheses or not, but there's nothing inside of them to actually simplify. So from there, we did parentheses, inside parentheses. Now we move on to any exponents. Now, we did do, when we did within the single set of parentheses, we followed the order of operations within there. So we did inside the parentheses and got 8, and then we squared it to get the 64 right here. But we haven't actually evaluated exponents across the whole equation. So we can go ahead and do this portion right here. And in that same step, I do want to note that we can actually drop the parentheses on the 3a minus 64 either on the last step or now, because there's no more exponent on that, and there's no multiplication outside or anything like that. So it's just 3a minus 64 minus 2 equals, and then 3 squared is 9, and then we still have times 2 plus a. So we have our exponents completed. Now we do multiplication and division whenever they come from left to right. So we'll start on the left side. No multiplication or division other than 3a, and we don't know what a is. For now, it's going to stay 3a. So 3a minus 64 minus 2 equals, and then 9 times 2 plus a. We can go ahead and do 9 times 2, which is 18. So we have 18 plus a. And then from there, we did multiplication and division. Now we move on to the last part, addition and subtraction. So with addition and subtraction, we can go ahead and combine like terms on the left side over here. This negative 64 minus 2. And so then we have 3a minus 66 equals 18 plus a. Now we've done all of the order of operations within, and so now we just use inverse operations, so almost like we're working the opposite direction in order of operations. I always suggest getting your variables together on one side first. So that would mean subtracting a or subtracting 3a. I'm going to subtract a so that I can move it to the other side, and get 2a minus 66 equals 18. From there, I would add 66 to both sides. And that's because I'm trying to isolate this 2a. And if I can get that 2a isolated, then I will be able to eventually solve for a. So we have 2a equals 18 plus 66 is 84. And then once we have that, then we can go ahead and divide both sides by 2 so that we can get a by itself. And we get a equals, and if you can do this in your head, you can divide each digit by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So we can do that, or even 80 divided by 2 and 4 divided by 2, and you get 40 and 2, and that's going to be 42. So a is equal to 42 on this example. Now let's take a look at number 2. So on number 2, we have a similar process. We have a, which is 2, and we're going to put 2 in for a here and over here. And then we will also do the same thing for c. c is 8, so we're going to put 8 right here. So we're going to follow our order of operations again once we get them plugged in. So I'll go ahead and write those out. So when we start plugging it in, we have 4 times 2 minus 2, close the parentheses squared, plus 7b, we don't know what b is, equals 4 times 8 squared plus b minus 6 plus 2 squared, and then close that parenthesis. So following our order of operations, we do need to do what's inside the parentheses first. So let's do this and this. Within that one on the right side, we actually need to do this first before we can do the entire set of parentheses. We'll do the 6 plus 2, then we'll square it, and then we can go on to b minus that. So on the next step, 4 times 2 is 8, and then minus 2 is 6. So we really have 6 squared here, plus 7b equals 4 times 8 squared plus, in parentheses, b minus, and then 6 plus 2 comes out to be 8, and then we do have that squared. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So if I just simplify in the parentheses, that covers the first step. Then we move on to exponents. So we have 3 exponents we can evaluate: 6 squared, 8 squared, and 8 squared. So when we do that, we have 6 squared, which is 36, plus 7b equals 4 times 64. Notice that the 8 is the only number squared here, not the 4, plus b minus 8 squared is 64. At that point, we can go ahead and cross off exponents and move on to multiplication and division from left to right. I do want to also note, once you have this b minus 64 and there's no more squared or anything, we can actually go ahead, because this is plus that, we can go ahead and take away those parentheses if you want to. So now for multiplication and division from left to right, there's nothing we can do on the left side with multiplication and division, but we can go ahead and do 4 times 64 on the right side. So we have 36 plus 7b equals 4 times 64 is 256 plus b minus 64. At this point, we want to go ahead and continue with our order of operations. So addition and subtraction would be next within each side before we get into inverse operations. So we can go ahead and do 256 minus 64. So if we have 36 plus 7b equals 256 minus 64, you can either use your long subtraction and do it this way. 6 minus 4 gives us 2, and then either 25 minus 6, or you can sit there and borrow and carry and everything. And so 16 minus 6, 15 minus 6, try that again, there we go. 15 minus 6, and then borrow the 1 there. 15 minus 6 would give us a 9, and then 1 minus 0 is 1. So you can do it that way, or 25 minus 6 is 19, however you want to look at that. You can also do the mental math if you can count up from 64 Or you can subtract 256 minus 64 with some mental math tricks as well. So we get 192, and we still have plus b. At that point, we want to go ahead and do what we did on the last one here, where we start to get our variables together on the same side, because we've now done all of our order of operations within each side. So we subtract b from both sides, and that gives us 36 plus 6b equals 192. And then from there, we go ahead and subtract 36 so that we can start to get this 6b completely by itself. So we have 6b equals, and then 192 minus 36, which gives us 156. And then we divide both sides here by 6. And for b, we get 26. All right, so hopefully you can see the pattern here of plugging in the numbers, making sure you're careful with your parentheses, following your order of operations, and then working through your inverse operations. All right, and that's what the summary shows. So again, you're plugging in the values. So whatever variables they give you, you're going to plug in those values. And then you're going to use your order of operations going down the list. P for parentheses, E for exponents, multiplication and division left to right, and addition and subtraction left to right. Then once you've done that, then you use your inverse operations, which is going to be going up the list, starting with the adding and subtracting to move things over. Typically, that's what we'll see, maybe a little bit of multiplication or division. And then typically you're not going to see the exponents in the parentheses when you're doing inverse operations here. So hopefully that helps kind of show you how to put it all together into one problem.